Hi, Kathryn. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, good. It's lovely to see your Christmas background. We're coming towards Christmas now. It's exciting. Thank you for taking the time today to share some of your experiences in the program. Do you want to share a little bit about what you do and where you're from and what brought you to the program?
Of course. So I am a speech language pathologist in the United States. I live in Michigan technically, but I'm actually a full-time RVer. I have several state licenses from my travel therapy days, and so I travel around. Most of my clients are actually based out of Florida though, so that's where kind of the majority of my time is spent. And I do all telepractice, obviously.
Yeah.
So 100% people who wonder if it's possible, it definitely is. Um, and I specialize in reading and writing. I do kind of work on everything. I really enjoy all aspects of speech and language, but reading and writing, the literacy space is kind of my ideal client.
Yeah. So what brought you to the program? Where were you at before you started with me?
So before the program, in terms of like my caseload, things were going quite well. I was pretty full. I had a few open spots. I had just found out that a school contract I had wasn't going to be renewing for the next year. So I had about 10 hours that was going to be disappearing for the following year. So that was like a little scary. Um, but in terms of like confidence in my ability to sustain the business, I literally was just like, hopefully this keeps working for as long as possible. And when it stops, I guess I'll figure that out then.
Yeah.
So I have gone like, I mean, I've gained so much confidence in knowing like now I'm like, yeah, of course this is going to keep working. Like I have the strategies and the tools in place to make sure that I don't just run out of clients. And
Yeah.
most of my clients had almost all of them actually had come from like Facebook groups, which I know can be a great referral source. And a lot of people starting out like use that, but it also seems like very fickle and like not something you want to put all of your eggs into the basket of Facebook because the algorithms change all the time, or there's rules, or nobody's asking about speech and language and literacy the time that you need a client.
Yeah.
So I definitely was kind of just like sort of winging it at the point when I decided to enroll in the program.
Yeah. And you said about those 10 hours, like you filled those, right? Because obviously fall's been and gone. You filled all those hours up easily.
Yeah, which I was so shocked about. I was like, this is literally I'm never going to be able to fill 10 hours. Like, that's so many hours. And I mean, it happened
Actual
fairly
fact, you have
quickly too.
filled more than 10 hours because you've been like, what do
I
I do
filled
with all
more.
these clients? I can't
Yes, I
fill.
filled more than 10 hours. Yeah, and I've had to send some referrals on, like to other people, because I don't want to have kids on a waiting list. Um, but yeah, so I definitely filled that time and did so fairly quickly. I remember when I did the accelerator with you were like, what's your income goal? And I was like, well, it'd be great to just like, do what I did last year. And you were like, what? No. And I was like, okay, well, I'll like make this goal that's never going to be reached ever, like super lofty. And it's like, well, the end of the year is almost here and looks like I'm going to hit that lofty goal that I definitely thought I wouldn't. So
Do you
appreciate
remember
you
in the
pushing me in that regard
accelerator
too.
when you're doing those goals and I say to you what you think is possible and what I know is possible are two wildly different things. And that's why I
Yeah.
push people so far because I'm like, what you think is super lofty is actually achievable. It's just that you don't know how to achieve it. So then it feels ridiculous. And people
Mm-hmm.
like achieve their goals much quicker than they anticipate when they get the strategies because now they know how to hit their goals.
Yeah. Yeah,
So I'm
exactly. So
really excited to have you here because we had this moment that happens semi-regularly with people, particularly with people like you, where you're a self-confessed overachiever and you're like, I'm
I
doing
already know what you're going to
everything
say.
you're telling me to. And those people, we often get to this point about 8 weeks in where they're like, why is this not working? I'm doing everything you're telling me to, and it's not working. And I'm always like, just hang in there, because if you're doing everything I'm telling you to do, there's a tipping point around 9, 10 weeks into the program where it all just starts to come together. And then the next call, you were like, so the tipping point came. Do you want to share a little bit about what happened then?
Yes, for sure. So Exactly like you said, it had been, I think it was actually a little bit further out for me, but it might have been because I was kind of like a little slow to get started. And also, since I didn't have to fill in a ton of hours, I had way fewer like points of contact than what you recommend. So had I talked to, like 5 times the people that I did, which is kind of would have been your recommendation for like somebody just starting out, I'm sure it probably would have happened faster. But yeah, I was like, well, I'm spending money to send people these cool little presents and nothing's happening. So I guess I'll just keep doing this for a little while and maybe eventually I'll get a client. And I guess if I just get one client, it'll pay for itself. So I just have to get one client. So I just like kept plugging along. And then I got my first provider referral, and it was actually for siblings. So it was like a 2-for-1, which is always kind of nice when they come. It's not nice when siblings leave. But now knowing that I can fill their spots, if that ever happens, it's a lot less scary too. So yeah, you're like, just keep doing it, like push through, like it's going to be okay. And then, yeah, like you said, right after that, it was just
You've had
like,
referrals
wow,
pretty much every week since that point, right?
I have been kind of bad about keeping track of it, partially because like I haven't needed as many referrals, and I have in my inbox waiting to listen to tracking data on your referral sources. So that's on the list of things to do so that I have a better, but I'm trying to think. I've had like 6 or 7 provider referrals, and then I've also gotten some word of mouth referrals from my emailing to the families, which I wasn't doing before, being like, hey, like you can book a consultation with me if you think your kid would benefit, or if you know somebody who would benefit from this. And so I got, I think 2 or maybe 3 referrals that way. And I feel very confident because I'm kind of in the homeschool sphere that like, if I needed to like beef that up, like these people know each other and they talk, and like I feel like that word of mouth referral like would be a great way to continue getting clients, but it's not so like, oh, we just happen to think about it. It's like you're asking them to think about making a referral that they might not have otherwise.
And the thing that was really interesting about that point where you were stuck because you were desperate to do more, and you're like, I want to do more, tell me what I should do. And I'm like, if you do more, when this clicks in, it's going to click in and there's going to be like an onslaught of clients coming to you. So actually we were quite conscious of, like you said, paring back what you did so that we just filled up the extra you needed. But you're right, like there's probably half the things that we spoke about that you haven't put a lot of time and effort into, because we were both like, okay, well, this isn't going to pan out well if you end up with more clients than you can manage, which, I guess this was the same for you, but often people come into the program and they're like, I don't know how to generate clients. Like, I can't ever imagine a time where having too many clients is going to be my issue. And then by the end of the program, they're like, I've got too many clients, I don't know what to do with them. And I know we've had conversations about that too, haven't we?
Yeah. And I have tried to find like some people I've referred on. And then I think at our last call that I was on, we talked about like, I just let all of my referral partners know, like I'm full right now. I'll let you know when I have another opening. And I actually just happened to have an opening, and I got this referral that was for my absolute ideal client. And I have one time open, and the time works for them. And he's like, I knew you were full, and I told them that you might be full, but I told them they should contact you anyways.
And he was a really cool contact, wasn't he? Like that you've built a relationship with. Yeah.
He's on the board of directors for the Florida International Dyslexia Association. He's the president of the Reading League in Florida. So when I was talking to him, I felt like, oh my gosh, like hopefully I know what I'm talking about, because you are like the top tier.
Do you think you would have built that relationship with him without doing this program?
There's literally no way that would have ever happened. Ever. Like I would have never, ever like contacted him in the first place. And actually I ended up meeting with him through another person that I met because of your program. And she's the owner of the clinic that he works at. And this was the provider who like was so impressed after I had my meeting with just her that she wanted me to meet with her entire team of like 13 psychologists. So it's like, wow, that's like getting a lot of bang for my buck there. With just that one practice has many different providers who all kind of have a different specialty area. And so I got a referral from another one of those providers as well too, after doing the kind of group meeting.
Yeah. And I know that for you, that because of you're traveling and you just want a really simple life right now, working with kids you love when you want to. So there's no it was never in your plan to bring anybody on. But if you were in a different lifetime, are you confident that you have learned the skills to go on and grow a bigger practice and bring on team members and support them to fill as well?
Yeah, definitely. Like, oh my gosh. And I've like every once in a while, I'm like, maybe wonder if I actually did. And then I'm like, no, I specifically said I wanted my life to be simple and not have to deal with anybody else. But that does cross my mind. And I'm like, in another life, for sure. And like maybe someday in the very distant future, but my practice is still really new. Like I've only been full time for like a year and a half. And I
Yeah.
know a lot of people like go into it and they hire people super early. And I just don't feel like emotionally I'm like want to take
Yeah.
that on, because my first year was a little rough with some like tax fiascos and just like stress of like there's so much more to it than just providing therapy that like is a big learning curve. So definitely I think, you know, I would feel confident going into that. I also just wanted to circle back one more time to the fact that you had said, like, do you feel like you would have met this person if it wasn't for the program? And I wouldn't have met anybody because I've been living in an RV, like basically like not interacting with people for these last 2 years of this pandemic. I have never been in Florida in the RV. Like I've vacationed there like when I was a child.
Yeah.
So that's where all my contacts are. So there's no way I would have like even like I didn't even have any colleagues really that could have referred to me from like previous times in my life because I'm still pretty early in my career. And so it's like, I mean, even if you move to a brand new state and you don't know anybody, or even if you don't even live in that state, you can still connect with people.
Yeah.
Everybody always asks, like, oh, so where are you? And I was like, well, actually, I'm not even in Florida. I travel in an RV. And they're like, wow, that's super cool.
Yeah.
So, like, if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Yes. I'm glad you said that. So you touched on it briefly because when you mentioned that you had far surpassed your lofty goal, but what kind of increase have you seen in your revenue from where you were to where you are now?
So in terms of like my lofty goal, it's like $20,000 more than like I was thinking I would be able to, was the lofty
Yeah.
goal that I'm gonna meet. So I'm trying to think about
And you're not working anymore for
um
that, are you? It's just a different, slightly different clientele, or are you doing slightly more hours?
so partially it's a little bit more hours. Partially it's because that school contract went away. I wasn't making as much with the school contract as I am with private clients.
I think I
So
made you
that
put your
has
rates
been a
up as
big
well.
difference too.
No? I think I
What's
made you
that?
put I think I made you put your rates up as well.
Yes.
Yes, I did. I was like,
And I'm
I'd
now
be
like
surprised if you get through without putting your
about to
rates up.
about to get a raise. I didn't put them up a ton just because um I told you I was like, I don't really need the money. And you're like,
That's not the point. Even $5
yeah.
across
So
like 20 clients is $100 more a week though, right? It adds up.
I know. Yeah, it adds up so much. Like, I mean, just by I raised my rates like $4 an hour. And so, you know, it's like each person pays $6 more each week because most of the time they come twice. But it's like, oh, cool. I got like a really good raise.
Yeah,
That's great. And I put up my rates for my evaluations as well. And like I even had some, I actually had a parent tell me, I currently see a couple of her kids and I'm seeing one more of her kids. And she's like, oh yeah, you didn't really even raise your rates that much. It's like, okay, true. It
Yes.
could have been more, but
And you will do more soon, I'm sure. What would you say to someone thinking about joining the program? If they've got hesitations, what would you say to them?
so for me, like the biggest hesitation, like being like a frugal person is like, I was like, that is so much money. Oh my gosh, wonder if I spent all of that money and nothing happens. And I just threw all that money away. But then you can ask yourself, wonder if I didn't spend the money and then my business goes away. That would be much worse. That
Yeah.
was like my fear. I was like, well, hopefully it's sustainable. We'll see what happens. And then it's like you kind of can break it down, like even just thinking about like if you do an evaluation and you see one kid for 3 or 4 sessions, like you already paid for the program.
Yeah.
And then everything after that is just gravy, basically. Yeah. It's just like a bonus. So it's not like there's no, unless if you wanted to join for a longer period of time, there's no like ongoing fees. It's not like you're like roped into anything or, you know, whatever. So definitely I would just say like, yeah, it seems like a lot of money, but also, especially for like us as healthcare providers, like we all have advanced degrees. Do you know how much one credit of grad school costs? Like way more than this for one credit. And it's like not going to teach you how to be a business owner. Like your grad school classes are not going to teach you that. So like you probably have no idea what you're doing. And if you want to know what you're doing, like this is the best way to do it. And also like for me, honestly, like like the clients, getting the clients has been great. Like getting more money, that's been great. But like the biggest thing for me has honestly just been like how much less stressed I am, because I'm not just like constantly like going through my life, like waiting for it all to get snatched away from me and just disappear, like poof. Yeah. Like I don't feel like that anymore. I feel like just so much, like it's just like a huge weight to be lifted off. So like that weight being lifted off alone was worth the money. Because it's so much more than just about getting the clients. It's like, you know, and I think you offer so much like business advice, kind of like in addition, like business coaching. It's not just marketing. Like you get so much more than just that in this program. Yeah. And it's also been great to kind of like meet and collaborate with other professionals who are in the same boat. So you're not feeling like you're in it alone, because sometimes being a solo provider, it's like just you chilling by yourself, and it's nice to have that community kind of as an added bonus. Yeah, it is. And I would imagine that you were probably already 10x the investment you made in the program, in the additional clients you've had and filling those 10 sessions in the full. Like you would have probably made $25,000 extra, do you reckon, if you hadn't have filled those sessions, like between, because it would clock up quick. I mean, if I hadn't filled the sessions, I'm curious now. I'm doing math. I mean, well, over the course of it, maybe not quite yet, just because I'm not super far out from, I just finished my 6 months. I just finished that. I'm probably within a year though. Oh yeah, for sure. Like within a year, probably like way more than 10 times that. Wow. Like, I mean, because every client I got is like for a year. Yeah. And that goes back to what you're saying about the opportunity cost. Like, it's not so much what if you don't make this money back, it's like, what do you stand to lose? Like, and I've spoken to practice owners where they're 7 years in still trying to fill their caseload. It's like, if you'd have invested in year one, you'd have had 6 years where you'd been making twice as much money. Like, that's a lot of money to miss out on. And the stress, like, that goes with that. And even some of the clients, because like kind of in the early stages of the program, I was still getting some referrals from the Facebook groups. But even like those referrals, like once I started the program and I read some of the books you had recommended, and I like got some more information about like successfully running a business, I used to be like, okay, so yeah, if you like feel like working with me, let me know. And now I'm like, okay, so next steps are, we are going to get started. Here's my times that I have open. And so like even before like I got any referrals, like my conversion rate of people who I would meet with who would become a client like skyrocketed, like so much higher. So even that, like, you know, if I factored in all of that additional revenue that could have been lost because I didn't know how to kind of close on a client, so to speak, you know, it's even more. I love it. Anything you want to add? Well, just thank you so much. It's been so great to get to know you. Like, I always felt confident and comfortable asking questions. Like sometimes when you're meeting with somebody who's an expert, obviously like yourself, it can feel intimidating. You're like, oh, I don't want them to think I'm an idiot. But like, I never felt like that. I always felt like I could ask anything. I felt like I could ask it multiple times and in multiple different ways, like every single week if I needed to. And so I just think that, it was a really great experience. Like I said, that confidence and like just reassurance, knowing that my business, like, especially as like a young person, is going to continue on for many, 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 many years versus hoping it does, is just so much better. So thank you for everything. Well, you are welcome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been lovely to catch up with you, and I'm sure it'll be helpful for people to hear your experiences.